Welcome to Higher Ed Live, the live weekly web show about the world of higher education. We're all about professional development and digital development. We're all about a lot of cool stuff. And I'm here in studio with Mike Petroff, Emerson College and EDU Guru, and probably MikePetroff.com maybe?
Yep, sure, I got that too.
He's got it all. So I'm your host, Seth Odell, but as I said, right there, that's Mike Petroff. We are here today to talk all about virtual campus tours. It's a big, fun, filled, in-studio show. My first one in the new digs. So also making Mike is officially no longer a guest. He's now a co-host. He's been on the show enough. So we are declaring him an official Higher Ed Live co-host. So welcome. Thanks for coming, man.
Sounds good to me.
So before we dive into the awesome show topic, which I'm really excited about, I've had this one on the back burner for a while. Let's go ahead and thank the people that make this show possible. So right off the bat, guys, big thank you to Integral. They're the ones that make this show ad-free. That's pretty cool. But that is not the only thing they do, actually. Integral are the creators of the Schools app on Facebook, so be sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That happens this Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm sending a tweet out with a link now, and word is they may have one on Tuesday as well, so mark those calendars if it's true. Also, big thank you to the folks over at Omni Update, the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS OU campus, it's secure, it's scalable, with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and you know what? The user community is pretty awesome too. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in a customer satisfaction survey done by EDU Guru in 2010. So if you need a CMS, do yourselves a freaking favor. Get over to OmniUpdate.com. And finally, thank you as well to Scavenger. Higher Ed Live is sponsored by Scavenger. They're a Google-funded mobile game all about going places, doing challenges, and earning points. Recently, Scavenger partnered with IBM on a really cool project aimed at building a smarter planet, and they're bringing it to college campuses coast to coast. So, if you want to see if your college campus made the list for this cool project that's trying to better the world, well, check it out in just a second because we're going to have a link going out to that as well. So, guys, who's ready for a big show? I hope you're ready for a big show. As I said before, we're going to be displaying your tweets all night, coming up right here on the side. So if you got something to say, you know, keep it clean if you can. And we'll be showcasing it the whole time. So I just want to say, you know, thank you guys to the sponsors. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm ready to dive in and make this show possible. And to do that, we always start the show with a little something, well, we like to call the Weekly 5. It's 5 stories from around the world of higher education. 5 stories you should read, note, you know, think about. But we're not doing that today. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Seth, you didn't do that last week either. That's true. Last week I didn't do it because, well, I didn't read enough because I was moving. But this week I did read a lot, and I chose that it's a weekly one. So while I'm saying Weekly 5 here, it's not happening. It's the Weekly 1 this week, guys. There's only one story worth talking about, at least in my eyes. So, big note, guys. U.S. News and World Report's Best Colleges is coming out. So this is the big annual survey where they say who's the best of the best, and yeah, it's all over everywhere every year that it comes out. So you've seen it, you know, Harvard always coming out, being declared kind of the big ones, and then also you see if you search Google News, oh my gosh, so many schools putting out press releases saying how they are awesome and they are the best. Well, I gotta say, this is something that I really want to talk about, so, you know, Mike, I hope you're ready to kind of dive into this one. It's gonna be kind of interesting, so.
Let's do it.
Weekly 1, where do you start with the U.S. News and World Report rankings? It's a really frustrating thing for someone who works in higher ed, I think, that annually we stop and we judge ourselves and we rate ourselves primarily based on our reputation and based on the number of students that we exclude, not graduate. Now, while graduation rates are a part of it, it's amazing that the major rankings primarily focus on reputation, which is 25%, which is really kind of random, just the selection of a few administrators at each institution, and then again, focusing on how exclusive you are and how selective you are. And I just have to say that I, on a personal level, have a bit of a problem with that. I just think that, you know, while I understand top institutions are out there trying to be the best, that it's so sad to me that schools try so hard to make these rankings, and the way they try to make the rankings is by being more selective. So they're patting themselves on the back for saying, think about how many smart kids we didn't educate this year. I would rather see a ranking of what schools are producing the most and what schools are scaling at the fastest rates right now and are educating the most students year to year that are capable of doing it. Because if you go back and you read your mission statements, I'm sorry, guys. I'm not seeing something in there that's really reflective of what the U.S. News World Report rankings is asking for. I mean, well, just to take a Harvard, for instance, in 1650, if you look at their actual charter, because they don't have a mission statement, it talks about educating the youth in this country by all these criteria, and it prides itself on being a major education hub. And while it's a major research hub, too, and that's why it's important to be exclusive, I get that, there's grant dollars at stake, it's really disappointing to me that so many of us, if you look at our mission statements, are choosing, instead of trying to educate more people, we're trying to climb higher on the rankings. And that's just really disappointing. And I gotta say this, U.S. News and World Report rankings, it's all about money, guys. Literally, schools have to pay to display the rankings on their websites. They're selling so kids can try to get these lists and see them. And the thing that we were talking before is that high school counselors really aren't even utilizing this stuff anymore.
Right, and it's interesting that I'll tweet out a link right now, but Inside Higher Ed came out with sort of a reaction piece to the U.S. News rankings that came out, and what happened was a small portion of the rankings come from surveys that are sent to high school counselors, and the participation rate this year dropped from 21% of survey respondents last year down to only 13% of high school counselors that actually gave surveys back. So I think it says a little bit to, I don't know why the reason that is, but it says a little bit to counselors not putting as much emphasis on the rankings as they did in previous years. Maybe they're becoming smart too. That's not everything that matters. It may be other factors that relate to the match of the school to the student, other services that are out there, you know, online services, portals that students can go in to find matches, where they're not just looking at that book and looking down listings anymore.
Yeah, so, and that brings up a good point. So let's look at these high school counselors aren't using it statistically maybe at the same rate, and prospective students are. Then why do these rankings exist? And these rankings exist is my opinion, as an ego stroke to the administrators at these institutions that rank each other because they want to look like the best and they want to pay to display this. And to me, it is an absolute distraction from a mission statement. So I'm going to put this out here right now, guys. If your institution is getting ranked and choosing not to play into this game where you're dumping out press releases and paying to display these badges, tell me, and I will give an unsolicited shout out every single week to any institution that has the backbone and the commitment to their mission statement to stand up and say, I'm proud of the students I educate more so than the students I exclude. So if you do that, hit me up. I want to hear all about it. So we're talking about unsolicited shout outs. Again, I'll give them to anybody out there who's willing to take a stand with me. I realize I'm just a web show, so I want to see you guys stand up too. We do have another unsolicited shout out, and it's a bit of a different tone this week. So I'm really excited about this week's unsolicited shout out of the week. Who's it going to? Well, it's going to Conan the Barbarian and a friend of his, and allow me to explain why. If you didn't see this, it's really great. Somebody at Trinity College put a faculty bio up for Conan the Barbarian as if he was an actual professor there, and it apparently was done anonymously, so we don't know who, but it's just very interesting. It was put up as, it sounded like an inside joke internally, but it got out of hand. Everybody on the internet's read it. Guys, if you haven't read this faculty bio for Conan the Barbarian, give yourselves a laugh before you start on Monday. Check this out. I love it. Whoever had the sense of humor to do that, I hope you didn't lose your job. The only thing I'm mad about is that I didn't think about doing that first when I had a chance at UCLA when I helped work with faculty bios, because that seems like a really golden opportunity. So, I mean, hat tip to that individual that had a little fun with it. Okay, guys, that's us as a shout out. This is Virtual Campus Tours. That's what we're here to talk about today. So let's dive right in and do it. This is a big topic, so again, I really want to hear what you guys have to say, because we're going to get into some really interesting stuff. So, Virtual campus tours, where to even begin? I think the best way to talk is maybe talk about the importance of the campus tour in general.
Right, definitely.
Which is just something, whether you work in admissions or not, you guys know on a campus that campus tours are so important, not just for the student to get a better feeling, but they literally help convert. So this is a really big admissions tool. So, I mean, I guess to put it simply, the virtual campus tour is trying to find a way to replicate that experience, replicate those leads, you know, in a virtual format for people that can't come to campus.
Right, definitely. I mean, basically the trend became that, you know, schools saw that this campus tour gave so much emphasis on the student life experience, the classroom experience, and, you know, with virtual tools, we try to figure out ways to apply that experience on the virtual environment. I think we'll get to sort of applications for that a little bit later in the show, but because it's such an important indicator on admission and application and yield, we're trying to figure out the best way to do this online right now.
Yeah, and again, the numbers don't lie that it's important, but the virtual campus tours, the numbers for that are a little shakier than
Right.
campus. I mean, we've talked about the Noel Levitt's 2011 E-Expectations study. We just talked about that last week. That one said about 40% of students actually used a virtual campus map, and 30% said it better improved their opinion of campus. So clearly that's a strong number on some hands, but a lot of them still aren't using it. So the question is, are students not finding it, or are they finding it and not finding it useful? And we're going to get into that tonight, because you might be surprised at what we have to say about virtual tours and the future of them as a whole. And the last thing I want to say is I want to have a brief conversation too, and this is a question to you guys, first one I'm throwing out there, virtual tours versus interactive maps. Because they're not one and the same exactly. So many institutions have interactive campus maps, or they have campus maps for navigation, but interactive tours aren't exactly the same thing. And I know people have talked about this before. Kyle James, EDU Guru guy, he's also works at New Cloud. I'm sure we'll probably mention them later. He's mentioned before about how much he really likes the map-based stuff, and how not all virtual tours are interactive maps, but all interactive maps can be virtual tours. And very interesting. The point that I think, bottom line, is that it's coming down to navigation. The fact that a virtual tour to me is not just about how to walk around on campus and get from building to building. Virtual tours are not about buildings. It's about what's happening inside the buildings. It's about the culture, the experiences, the emotions. It's the same thing when someone comes on a physical tour of campus. Sure, you're showing them where the dorms are, but let's be honest, isn't the anecdotal information, you're sharing these stories, that's what's making a larger impact sometimes than just how pretty an outside building is and how you walk to the dining hall from where your dorm is. So my opinion going into this, I'm just going to be totally blunt, I want to get out there, is that it's about interactive virtual campus tours. And that's my thought on it. But let's dive in. I mean, when you're talking about virtual campus tours, there's a lot of different types out there. So maybe we could talk first about the types of content that you can find, the tour elements.
I mean, like the first that comes to mind right now is that you're looking at photos and video are the most important key elements that go into any representation of a campus tour. So I mean, a lot of schools talk about how difficult it was to capture video at some point, or photos that they have are very generic, don't really represent the school. But I think those are still two pieces now that schools are looking to find new ways to capture that, so they can represent that in a virtual tour online. Yeah. I mean,
the 360 photos were a big thing, years ago. Thankfully, that seemed to kind of fall off as a trend. But yeah, 360-degree photos, still photos, video, and then there is the map component clearly, which is important too. But I think we'd agree that when it comes to the virtual tour elements, not one of those works alone as a standalone. And you do see some campuses that say, click through our photo slideshow tour, or click around campus just to get 360-degree photos. I would go on a limb and say that I have not seen a single example that impresses me that's a single element.
Right. I mean, it's about context, right? Like when you're seeing a photo, photo says 1,000 words, whatever that statement is. But I mean, when you're looking at that, if you don't have text to help position that within the college, or if you have a video that's just showing sort of scenic areas of the college where you're not seeing what happens in those buildings, what happens in the classroom experience, you lose a lot of that context. And now with the ability to show things side by side, show things at the same time to add more elements into a video or into an all-in-one campus tour, I think it all comes down to that context that becomes important.
Absolutely. And I think that's why, a basic point I think we can all agree on as we move into this conversation tonight is that it's some combination of these elements that is going to make an interactive tour. It's not going to be one thing that's standing alone. So let's dive into the big first question I have, which is navigation. I mean, however you have an interactive campus tour, you're going to have a series of content, whether it is directly reflective of a physical campus or not, and someone's going to need to lead them through this, right? I mean, essentially, it's just like when you have a campus tour, someone comes to your campus, you have a guide that guides them through it. So here's the first question is, how can you navigate a virtual campus tour? And the truth is, there's a lot of different ways, and we've both looked at a lot of tours, and no two are always exactly alike. The first one I've seen is navigating by the university, which means you're deciding how are people going to go. They literally have to go from A to B to C to D, and you're completely controlling the direction they go in. There's benefits to that because your content's getting right there, the final thing, but I think we both agree that, at this day and age, with the internet, with content interaction, people have to have at least some control over what they're seeing. There's no way, no two prospective students are exactly alike. So to provide them the exact same virtual campus tour experience is a complete mistake and a complete miss.
Right, and it's attention span. Are you making a tour that lasts 15, 20, 30 minutes? In person, that's a short campus tour. Ours lasts 45 minutes to 60 minutes. But online, if you're expecting a student to sit in a chair for 15 minutes and go through exactly the path that you're expecting them to go through, you're just doing it wrong at that point.
So, that being said, I think there are some examples of campuses that utilize a combination where they're going to navigate, but they're going to give you some layer of choice. And there's a lot. I'm just going to pull up one example that I think is cool. American University does an interesting way where at the top of this page you see all the different students, and you can click on it, and it kind of gives you a quick overview of who the students are, and you can click, and each student can navigate you on their own tour. So it's their own personal one. Now, I like this. I think it's a little tough sometimes to click on the student and figure out who they are and how you connect, whether it's major or whatever it is. But I love that idea that, yes, they're going to navigate for you, but they're also going to take some of your interests to provide you a customized version. But that's not alone. You can also have tours that are entirely customized by perspectives too. So where someone can direct themselves. And this is one hits on something that I've been talking about for a long time. One of the first blog posts I ever wrote was about a choose your own adventure style virtual tour. And this is something that I've loved. Originally I demoed it talking about using YouTube annotations, but the idea is simple that you shouldn't expect, again, no 2% of students are going to want the same exact content at the same exact time. So provide them with information and then a series of choices. So you choose what are your next available options and let them go from there. So with the YouTube version I gave was, you walk by a dining hall and you literally say, click here to watch more videos about dining halls, or move on to the next thing. And you keep having these, essentially, it's just, it just webs out. And people can dig farther and farther in. And this is because you walk by the engineering school on a campus tour, right? And this is just, it's a general one, but the student knows they really want to get into engineering, but you gloss over it like every other building. You could have spent a half hour in that building, and that one student who wants to be an engineering student really, really wants it. But unless you actually have tours by major or departments, which not all campuses do, especially based on size, you're really missing out. So online, it's totally different. You can provide something where someone's moving along in the process, and the second they hit something they're really interested in, they can dig deeper and deeper and deeper and spend, 20, 30, 40 minutes in one area, for instance. And that's something I think is really cool. So I love that aspect of customized navigation.
Yeah, and what I want to add to that, think of two sites immediately that keep you buried in so much content all the time and keep you clicking through: YouTube and Amazon. And the way that they're doing that is YouTube has the related videos on the right-hand side. That alone changed the nature of how we grab content through any channel that's video content. Tell me the last time you went to a YouTube video and didn't notice the related videos on the right-hand side and click on one of those. Why aren't schools applying that to say, here's one portion of a video that you can view, and here's suggested other videos that maybe other users have viewed, or maybe we think relates to your major. And also with Amazon doing sort of that suggested items that, we're saying that you probably like these items if you like this. If you're catering your tour online the same way that these companies are doing it, the user's already expecting that because they've seen that from other sites, and it's easy to navigate through. You're going to keep them going throughout your entire tour if you do it that way.
I love that for so many reasons. One is that you can tap into content that you already have created.
Right.
If you're looking to create a virtual campus tour, you don't need to start from scratch. You can start with the content you have and then figure out how to build a system that provides people a way to navigate through it. So that's a really good thing. And I love, love, love the Amazon Netflix style thing. That it's just like YouTube related videos. There's no reason we can't manually provide this. Students that like this also like that. That's a really cool idea. Now, you guys know I've said I love YouTube annotation virtual tours. And it pains me today to say that I no longer think they're the best option. Now, just to pull up one that looked great, St. Mike's did a great version of it where you would end each video and you could click through and pick what you wanted. I really love this navigation. Again, this is something I really preached about. And I have to say today that it's not flawless anymore. And the simple reason is this, and it's important to note, that entire YouTube virtual tour is built around YouTube annotations, which is the feature where you can drag boxes around the picture, link to other videos within YouTube. None of that works in HTML5 yet. It's entirely Flash. And so that means if you right now today have a YouTube virtual campus tour, it is not accessible via mobile. And that's the topic I want to get to now, which is, this is the game changer, and why I'm so happy we're talking about this topic today, is mobile has changed everything. Everything with virtual campus tours. I'm going to come right off the bat and say this. If your virtual campus tour is Flash-based, you have a problem. You better have a committee starting tomorrow. Avoid the committee if possible, at all possible. But if you have a Flash-based virtual campus tour, you have a problem in your hands. And YouTube is the same thing. That if you've built this tour on YouTube, and yet people are watching it, and they're saying you click here, and they're hitting their iPad, and they can't click. And there's no way to do it. So this is the biggest challenge, I think, is how do you make a virtual campus tour that works on your site and works via mobile? That's such a huge challenge. and because mobile traffic's on the rise. I mean, most institutions now are seeing between, that I've known, this is just the anecdotal experiences, anywhere from 3 to 5, 6% mobile traffic, you know, and students are browsing. They're using this to look, and if they land on a site that doesn't work, it's tough. I mean, just an example, guys. Okay, I went out, I love American University's versus tour. I love this. I went to it with my iPad today, and it was a blue square. Nothing. Not even an errors or nothing. Not even, you know, because nothing but Flash, it's gone. It was so confusing. If you're a prospective student, you see that, you're gone. You're on to the next. And we already know, we're talking stats, no Levitts, that if you have a bad web experience, people will consider dropping you. So, guys, you have a serious problem if it's Flash-based. So that's one thing, I think, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to add to that, I think that my response to that is that shouldn't make you want to stay away from a platform like YouTube to deliver video content. I think what you need to think through is the idea is there that, you know, the annotations at the end of the video leading you through to these new sections may not work, but that video content that's sitting there is still important. So what you do is you need to couch that content in a way that it can be applied to YouTube without annotations. So if someone lands on that and organically, they're finding that video, still getting that 2 minutes worth, and maybe they search for more. You know, they're not being led. So it doesn't look like it's bad user interface design. It's just another application. Try to be on every platform that's there. And we may get a little bit more into HTML5 and building into that. Yeah. But I don't think you should stay away from it. Try to be on every platform. But don't make your content be so pigeonholed into that platform that's going to sit on that it restricts you from applying the same great video content into other areas across the web.
Absolutely. No, and one thing we mentioned too is, like saying, I'm not saying abandon YouTube by any means. I love YouTube and your stuff should still be there. But the thing, if it's not on your site, how do you navigate it? And if you do have a tour that's using annotations, how, if someone's on mobile with browsers there, how are you not going to lose them? Because you can't just say, okay, I'm going to cut my losses at 5% instantly before anyone even gets here. That doesn't make sense. But you know, one thing to note, why do I love the YouTube annotations tour ideas? Because someone can watch a video, and then they can be given options on to click, and they can customize it to choose your own adventure. Take 6 minutes, 60 minutes, see exactly what you want when you want it, right? You can build that entirely on your site right now, because YouTube videos do display in HTML5, so you could put your YouTube video on your site and then put your own links, just like annotations, outside of the video. So you still have options, and you can say, click, you know, always select your next content. So I'm not here to say it doesn't work, but I'm here to say the model that worked 2 years ago doesn't work today. And it didn't even work 2 years ago, but the traffic was so low it almost worked. But you know, mobile traffic is really on the rise. It's coming up quickly, and this, when it comes to stuff like campus tours, it's connected to dollar signs. So that's a big thing you have to take note of. And the last thing I'll say about mobile too, I was talking about this, well, there's a couple things, but this one for me is that students are browsing to get to your content, right? You know, the prospective students are flipping through, they're searching, they're looking at Google, you know, so the fact that there are people out there right now that have, you know, applications that are campus tours, I think that, to me, is a bit of a miss. That if you're saying that a prospective student is going to need to find your site, find out you have an app, open iTunes, download the app, open the app, and then start the tour, at that point, you are only engaging with your most selective prospective students that want it the most. And while that's great, the best part of these tours is connecting with the kids that are somewhat interested, that are swayed, that are thinking between you and 10 other institutions that you're beating out. So you don't want to just target the kids that already love you, and that's what you're doing if you have a virtual tour that's based on an app. Now, that being said, that means an app in general, not a geo-specific app, because there is some stuff that you can play with in the geosocial space. So.
Right, I think, you know, what Seth's trying to get at is the barrier of entry that exists there for if you have a school-specific app, the population of students using that before they get to your school is very small. But if you reach out and look for students using apps like Scavenger, apps like Foursquare, GoWallet, those things that are already, you know, have sort of a mass adoption out there, why not build on top of those platforms so by the time they get to your school, they have something sitting there, they just have to go to a specific area. And since it, you know, recognizes your location, to be able to pull up the Emerson College Tour right, you know, as you're walking through campus, that's a really strong tool to use. I think the problem, though, is that we haven't really found the correct application for that. Because, you know, when we think of let's use Scavenger, for example, not just because they're a sponsor or whatever, but I love their app, and I've played around with it a lot, but I think as a prospective student, really what's the gain for a student in addition to having, you know, someone walk them around or seeing the classrooms? Like, what's the additional incentive to use that besides just being a cool tool? So I think we need to look at apps as not just trying to replicate the process they're already going through, but add some incentive, add some value on top of the tour.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think finding a way that, again, even with campus tours, how scalable are campus tours now? You can literally only go as many campus tour guys as you have. Do you know how many times I hear from schools saying, we sell out our campus tours at our peak admission times because we just don't have the staff for it? Or at some point when you have 50, 60, 70 kids on one tour with one tour guide, they're having a negative experience because they can't hear, they're so far behind. And that happens. There's a tipping point with campus tours where it's going to hurt your enrollment, not help it. Right. So, I mean, that's an important thing to think about. But I think there's definitely a space where a student can do self-guided stuff and things where they are physically there with mobile. So that's why when we say that mobile, I mean, we could I think we could do a whole show. We could do multiple shows on just mobile with campus tours alone because the opportunity is there. There's so much, and that's why I just want to say this is before we move on. Is that every example that's going to be a positive example has to work on all mobile devices. It has to work on all platforms. It has to work everywhere. And that's the big challenge. Beyond that, there's amazing stuff. We just brainstormed before the show. There's some cool things you can do with mobile. So I don't want to even stop there, but that's just the surface of where we are today, which is looking at where campus tours exist now. So that's kind of the main elements of campus tours, and I want to dive into positive examples and talk about what works and what doesn't. So guys, bottom line, if you have an example of a campus tour that you think works, or your institutions, send it out right now, because we're off the bat. If it's flash-based, we already know we're going to have a little bit of a problem, but that's okay. I want to talk about the ones that work and ones that don't, because I will say this before we move on. I don't think there's a single example on the market today that is flawless at all. I think there's one or two that I really like, but the fact that there's not means we have to have this conversation. And what we have to do is identify all the elements that work and talk about the ways they fit together. And then we got to see who wants to make the most money, get the most students, make the most things happen, wants to be the most creative, and who's going to go out there and put all this together. So let's talk about some examples. We talked about the YouTube thing already, and I talked about how you can still kind of replicate it on your site. But one more time, why do I love the YouTube idea is that if your tour is not customizable, you're missing out. I mean, maybe it's just because I absolutely love those choose-your-own-adventure books as a kid. That were, let me read those. It's like, if the guy jumps off the cliff, skip to chapter 7. If he doesn't, skip to chapter 8, and then you read it. Whatever. I love those books. But the point is that this is common sense in the online age now, that you want people to be able to get the most relevant content at the exact moment when they want it, however they want to receive it. And that's what any kind of a customizable tour does. So I love that element. I want to pull up American University again because there's some things I really liked here. This is a great example. Again, it's Flash, so that's a problem, but it's a great example of a tour that really, I think, works for letting people choose their different area to be navigated. I want to be navigated by this student with this major or that student. It lets you connect emotionally to your tour guide a little bit, the same way you do on campus. I think that's a really cool thing. Big thing is is that there's a map still, and it's a cool way to do navigation, that you don't just click through buildings, but it shows you where it hits on campus. We talked before that I really don't think virtual campus tours are just maps, but I think maps are a really great component of it. And that's why it is important to at least display, here's where you might be on campus, here's what's going on in this building, here's where it is. It's about putting reference points up.
Let me just respond to that, and I think it's a nice interface, but what you need to think about if you're going to build something has sort of that lower searchability, it's not on a platform like YouTube where people are just going to be searching for videos, or it's promoted across your website. It's sort of a destination type of page. If you're going to build something like that, know that it can't be on every platform, and know that you have to build a marketing campaign around that to direct people to that site. The problem with a lot of these is we spend so much time and energy into content collection, creating the video, creating that really nice site, but then at the end of the day, we don't put any money aside to actually promote it. So we're just expecting people to come naturally to that site. Where a site like this, I think, sits great on its own, but someone going to YouTube and searching for American University dorm tour is not going to see this. They're going to see whatever video some student at the college put up there if the school is not putting their own content on YouTube. So I think while something like this is great, don't focus on this being the only thing that you're doing. If you're creating great video on this, repurpose it and put it on YouTube too. So maybe they don't land on this site, but they're also seeing that on YouTube if they're searching for content there.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing too, is that, I mean, we're going to get into some big topics right now, but I think virtual campus tours as they exist it really is maybe a fundamentally flawed idea. Right. Maybe it's not about, this is a question that Mike asked me before the show. I was saying that virtual campus tours are really just about giving people the opportunity to experience your institution, gain information about your institution, emotionally connect with it, all the same kind of things you do on a campus tour. My argument was that campus tours are less about showing you how close two buildings are, and much more about a tour guide having the chance to share anecdotes. I mean, you said it best, that so many institutions give out fact sheets beforehand because they don't want you to worry about those numbers they want to free as much as from your guide. They want to free up your tour guide to share stories with you, to make you laugh, to make you smile, to make you things. It's about that bond, because you connect a bond with the campus. You feel like, I fit in here, and you go, right? So here's the question. If campus tours aren't really that much about physically touring campus and more about experiencing an institution, then the question that Mike asked me was, would you say that a college website is a virtual campus tour? It's kind of a loaded question that he asked me, and ultimately I'd probably say not really, but I think it's a great question. That if your website can, if done effectively, can accomplish all the same things a campus tour does, making you feel a bond to the institution, make you gain information, make you visually see how it looks, then maybe we're missing things when we're just trying to build a virtual campus tour that looks exactly like a physical tour that you can go on online.
And I think that's always the first iteration of taking something physical and putting online is making it look exactly the same, right? With any other application that's been out there, with all the things that we're doing with, sort of connecting each other, networking, all of those apps look exactly like the in-person exchange right away. Maybe what we're getting towards is looking at your site more as a holistic site as, if you take a prospective student and lead them through all of the pieces that they normally get as information on tour, with video, with the fact sheets, with how much it costs, with what majors you offer, maybe you should look more into the user experience on your website and how the path that you're taking students through. Look at your analytics, look at the navigation that they're going through. Where are you sending them when they're landing on the homepage? How are they getting to your site? What keywords are they using? That's all going into what that campus tour experience is like. If you're just requiring students to go to a single standalone page with a flash embed that says this is the campus tour, you're missing out on a gigantic population of students that just naturally come to your site, click through 3 or 4 different things, and then leave. So if they never land on that campus tour, they're not seeing that experience. But why not integrate that experience throughout the process of them going through your site? I think that's kind of that idea that I want to throw out there to say, look through your site and find those examples that you can pass students through, not just lead them to a destination at the end of the rainbow,
Couldn't agree more. I don't mean to laugh, but there's a great tweet. If a campus website's supposed to be a campus virtual tour, most institutions are screwed.
No, I mean,
we're not trying to be negative. We swear. And maybe this is just a little pie in the sky, but I think there's institutions that can accomplish this. I do think it's not that far fetched. That anywhere someone lands, they can get this experience and be funneled into this stuff.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, that's not too far from the truth for a lot of schools because there's so much emphasis put on so many different areas of the college. But my drive is to say, if a prospective student, find where they're landing on your page, find those top 3 pages that cover 75% of your students landing from either ad traffic or organic searches or marketing campaigns that you're putting out there. Is there a direct action item to lead them through a path through their site that you can get a virtual campus tour by doing page clicks and watching video along the way? If that's possible and you can just fix that to start, don't worry about the rest of your site. I mean, your sales pitches to those prospective students that are landing on one page, by the time they click through 3 to 4 pages, you want to sell them on an action item to either inquire, to apply, or to accept your university. So I really urge you to think about what your school's site is doing to make sure that that action item happens at the end of the day in the context of a campus tour, and not just say, let's build a campus tour that's shiny and nice that we like, but no one's going to. That's the problem.
And Michael Freeman has a good point. He says, well, the problem with the site is the tour idea is that the site is already trying to be too much to too many people. And I agree. I'm not saying that's not the case at all. And I think deployment of something like this would be really hard. But I mean, I would say this. This is my thought, and I don't agree. Your site is and will always be primarily a perspectives tool. I mean, I think that's why the sites exist first and foremost. That's your primary audience, I believe. And maybe it's not for everybody, but all the stats I've seen from most institutions too, that's what's driving it, and that's who we should be geared towards. But I'm not denying that fact that it'd be incredibly difficult to directly deploy something like this. But I think this is, again, about the way you think about it. And it's not just the way you think about it, campus tours, on this big picture level like we are now. It's even on small levels. Like, I want to get back to the node idea. Like, one of the things we loved about the virtual campus tours, like on YouTube, for instance, is that you can always punch in new information. I have heard so many examples from friends and colleagues in the industry saying, that we had a tour, we had a great video, but now we got to recut it because some professor left and we put a soundbite in from them, or we foolishly mentioned how many students we have, and now that changes every year. The great idea of having a virtual campus tour that is the sum of its parts is that you can always pull out one piece and supplement it with another. That makes your tour sustainable. And that's a really great component of it, whether it is something that's small, is that having an idea that you can have want to hear more about this, and then you go there and you can pull that information out. And that's the same way our websites are set up. That you can always update one site without updating the entire site.
Right.
And that's the way I think you need to approach that.
And I mean, what we're getting at too is, you know, breaking apart this notion that there's a single site, a single destination site where all of this content lives, where if you break it up into different nodes and have your video content be generic enough to be a 2-minute piece that can exist on YouTube, can exist on Vimeo, can be shared on Facebook pages, can be posted out on Twitter, to many different categories of people and shared out there. I mean, really what we're talking about is taking that, you know, single entity of a campus tour, blowing that up and spreading that content throughout the college site and throughout every platform where people can find this, share this, view it. I mean, that's the whole idea, is repurpose those individual pieces of the virtual tour into as many different platforms as you can. I mean, that's going to be the most success that you have.
So, now I know that earlier I promised and hyped online that I would display with you what I thought was the single best example of a campus tour online, considering we're harping on so much. Well, I had an idea I was going to share, and then within about 20 minutes of talking with Petrov before the show, he's convinced me there's no way that's the best because there's some flaws in it. That being said, I want to share something that I think has a couple really key success points, and I have to apologize for claiming I had the best example because Petrov quickly poked a hole in my wonderful theories.
I mean, I think we should still look at it and talk about the pros and cons and maybe ways to improve it, and then talk about another example, maybe the way that we can merge the two into one.
And that's ultimately what it's going to be, is that it is about putting these elements together and putting the right combination, and there is no one formula, and there's definitely no one person that's figured it out yet. But here's a couple key things. Right off the bat, huge shout out to the University of Stirling in Scotland. They have a completely HTML5 virtual visit site. Guys, I'm sending the link out now. Flat out star this. You want to see this for a couple reasons. One, it's the only reason I know of, it's the only example I know of an HTML5 virtual visit or virtual tour. You guys got another one out there? Hit me with the link. I'll put that in the archive as well. This is important. I love a couple things about this tour. The first off, it starts with the prompt where they encourage you to watch a 60-second video all about the campus. Why? Short attention spans. And these are prospective students and their parents. So they don't make you do it. You can dive right in, but they encourage you, hey, watch our pitch more or less, because we know after a minute some of you are going to be gone. I mean, statistically, you're losing 20% of your audience in the first 10 seconds of a video. So they're smart, I think, to put the most forward content right away, rather than focusing on one piece of campus, starting with an overview, at least suggested. I like that. I like that there's a virtual campus tour. I like that you can go through. It's map-based, which I don't love, which is you have to click on the buildings. But there's two more things I want to mention. One, they have a virtual experience where you essentially click and they have a collection of videos by student life and by what's it like in town, the area they're in. Just more, they're utilizing extra content that they have, because again, most people that look at your virtual tour aren't just saying, I wonder how I walk from my dorm to class. So this is a way that you have their attention, let them see it. And the last thing, I think I actually forgot to mention to Mike beforehand, so I'm hoping to get a little wow factor here since I forgot to mention this. This entire tour is available in almost 10 different languages.
See, that's a wow factor. I actually just posted a tweet about that.
I was saving that one on purpose. I want to wow them.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, that's a show in itself, I think, for multi-language stuff. But
yeah.
If I could, I'll just respond to a couple things I saw that maybe after they're tweaked could make this even better. Yeah. One of the first things that you see is that 60-second pitch. The 60-second pitch is great because it's couched with context. It has text beside it. You're watching the video. You're reading at the same time. The problem is at the end of that, there's no action item. There's nothing to do. They don't tell you what to do. Now, you can infer that, yeah, I want to click on the next tab up at the top of the screen, but what they should do is lead you step by step through this process, or give you several different options on the right-hand side to say, you know, are you into this major, or are you into seeing student life? They could really emphasize that a little bit more. The other problem that I saw is on their campus tour, it's great because they show the map to start, and they give a flag indicator that says start here. The problem is after you start there and go to that pop-up, where do you go next? They don't lead you anywhere. They don't suggest anything for you. I think where this falls short is that, you know, step 1 is great, but you have to have that step 1B leading into step 2A that they just don't achieve in the right way. So always think that, you know, get someone to that first page. If you get them to the second page, then they're more likely to click on page 3, 4, 5. But if you stop at page 1, they're going to bounce. They're going to leave your site and immediately, you know, just, you know, not pay attention to any other content that you've worked really hard to get.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that's a really good point. That, I mean, and step 2 is so important. I have some people miss that too. That you've gotten someone to your site, you've gotten them to watch something, and then what's next? And I will say that in that example, I think it falls short. That how like I'm looking, how do I know what the difference between Alexander Court and the atrium? I don't understand what those mean to me because I'm not a student there yet. But again, I love that it's HTML5, and I love the multi-language, and I love that the tabs, that the options are up to you, and that's key. But what are some other examples? So I looked so hard for positive examples of virtual campus tours and found so few. So here, I'm going to ask another question then. This is one that we were debating before. So there are stats from like Noel Levitt that say 30% of students still say that a virtual tour on your website positively in some way impacted their view of your campus, right? So that's valuable, clearly, I think, right? But so here's the question. If 30% of students are finding it valuable, is it because the way we're deploying it works, or is it the fact that the other 70% aren't, is because we're doing it wrong? I mean, it's important to have that conversation because we're making a leap. I think it's a very small, safe leap. But I think when I look at that number, it tells me that we're doing it wrong, not that we're doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, that application of what a student is comfortable with calling a virtual campus tour, right? So go to a destination page on a website. There's some sort of flash interface that brings you either from an overview of a map or student experience, but they're going through that. That's what they expect. That's the terminology that they think they had. That is a virtual campus tour. So how do we break that apart? I mean, you're breaking the mold with being a school that's saying you have a virtual campus tour. Well, what is it? Well, it's on YouTube, it's on this channel, it's on our website, it's mobile, it's this. Students not going to really think of that as a virtual campus tour, but maybe that's the way we have to couch this, as the campus tour experience, or virtually seeing the college in a different way. It's not one page, it's across many different pages. And I kind of want to add to that, we haven't really touched on this yet, but I brought up this idea before, is why aren't you virtualizing some key components of your in-person tour? So as you're bringing students around on campus, why aren't you giving some online experience to add to that value? We talked a little bit about Scavenger before, but if you're giving students an iPad on campus, let's just say, future thought, like, best case scenario, 5 campus tours go out during the day, one of them each time you give an iPad to each student on the tour. As they're stopping stop to stop, you're accenting stuff that the tour guide is talking about with picture galleries, with additional text, with maybe a video as they're walking from one stop to the other on the iPad, whether it's in an app or HTML5. But just think about that as a virtual tour experience too. You always want to find ways to enhance what you're already doing. In-campus tours work really well, but how can you tweak that a little bit to be able to give the student a better experience, and also on top of that, survey the student immediately right when they're done, and get them to inquire or sign up for an additional open house and leave with that experience, talking to mom and dad saying, wow, remember that was that school that had the iPad tour, that was this. I mean, that's a shiny object kind of thing for admission, but I think it would really work if you're thinking 1, 2, 3 years ahead, what to think about.
Totally, and I'll say this too, we talked this before, but one thing statistics have shown too is that the role of parents in a college choice is so huge. So when you're approaching a virtual campus tour thing, you have to understand your audience is more than one person. Because in the Noel Levitt stats, while no student said a campus tour, strongly negative, like got a school off the list, it was 4% of parents said that a negative virtual tour experience really impacted their opinion of a school. So parents are really using these things too. And I wish there were some more numbers. So we'll pass this on to them. That what's the numbers of parents that are utilizing that? But that's a big thing. So I got another big question we're throwing out there. So this isn't just for Petrov, guys. Again, get this out there. I want to hear what you have to say. But here's my question. Okay. Campus tours, as we know it, generally speaking, are by no means academically focused, right? These are almost in all cases either strictly navigation or student life. Now that's anecdotal perspective. That's what I've seen. Is they're almost always, oh, here's what it's like to be on campus, just general viewpoints, right? So are campus tours not academically focused because students don't want them to be, or because none of us have ever properly designed a good tour? And we say this because statistics show prospective students and parents search for one thing first more than anything when they go to your site. What do they want? They want academic content. Whether they search for it, browse for it, whatever. They want academic content right away. So the question is, why aren't we giving them academic content in a virtual tour? And is that the place for it? Because this is up for debate, I think. Is academic content not in a virtual tour because no one wants it, or because none of us has ever really tried to do that before? Because I haven't seen a lot of tours that are like, let's give you a tour of this major, or let's give you a tour of this academic focus on campus. And no one's really done that yet. And if this is what people are looking for most, that to me seems like a huge opportunity.
And I think, seeing that the numbers say that they go to see if you have their major, right, first. And then they are interested in financial intuition, in student life, in those areas. And there was a tweet that just came in that says, you can serve academic content, but you have to be careful not to overwhelm. I totally agree with that, because what happens is if you give them an entire tour experience that lasts 40 minutes all about a specific major, they're not seeing things about student life. They're not getting a general overview. So you really have to entice them with, you know, this is the type of student that you want to be next year. We have that. Then move on. So I think that's where we're missing out a little bit on the academic side, to introduce them to a major and then take them through the tour.
Yeah. And question comes up from Michael Feeney just asking, you know, it depends entirely on what do you mean by academic content. I mean, just generally speaking off the top of my head, what I'm talking about is the same stuff you see on your program pages. Any information about this, any information about your different programs, whether it's requirements or how the major is structured, what I mean by academic content is what you mean by academic content. Go to your site and click on a degree and you tell me what's there and tell me why is that information not on your campus tour. And I mean you figuratively, of course, for any of us. You know, that's the thing. However you decide to relay academic information about majors, your requirements, classroom experience, those things tend to fall a lot less onto virtual tours, it seems. So that's a big thing. Now let's go back from being way up here and bring it way down here and talk about, we said mobile I think is the biggest changer in virtual tours. But there's another one that's really big, and this one is Facebook. You know, if a lot of prospective students are on Facebook, you know, I think guys, this is off the top of my head, I think 27% of prospective students surveyed by No Levitz went to your Facebook page. But whatever it is, schools are now utilizing Facebook, and I've seen different schools. This is a look at Stony Brook, which is a virtual tour on Facebook. So I want to talk about what is the role of Facebook here, because I mean, first off, I got to say, no, not trying to harp on them, but I don't like Stony Brook's tour a lot because it's based entirely on how you navigate 360s or videos or map or walking tour. But again, I really think it's a lot less about which one of those, and it's more about the experience. I think all those things are accomplishing the same goal, and if I was a prospective student, I don't know if that's a choice that I really want to make. If I'm interested in being a certain kind of student on your campus, show me photos or videos. Like, you tell me what you have. But that doesn't change the fact I think Facebook is huge. So how does Facebook fit into the virtual tour game?
See, I think, you know, what happens is we try to think of Facebook as serving so many different things that we want to do with promoting content. And I think Facebook is a really good sharing platform. So I don't think content should really, my opinion is content shouldn't be hosted in Facebook unless you're trying to drive people to like your page. Really, that's the main point of it. So if you have a campus tour that's sitting on your Facebook page and they go through it and less than 50% of people ended up leaving that without liking your page, it's a failure. I would just throw that out there and say that, because if the content's sitting there, why not put that content on your site where you can lead them to inquire or apply? Where I feel like, you know, don't just shove content in because you think that students are on Facebook, therefore they'll watch it there. It's not true. They're on Facebook to go to links to other pages, or for you to lead them to an area where they can like, and then basically they're just putting your, different updates that you send out through your page. So think about that before you completely host a tour on Facebook. Yeah.
Now, not to pull back even farther, because I want to get back to Facebook, but Feeney brings up the point. Let me try to pull this back up. He says, one of the biggest barriers to doing a virtual tour right is the amount of work it takes to create and maintain. That's very true. So my question back is it worth the work? And I think when you look statistically at what campus tours generate for actually getting you applicants, I think the argument is yes. But I mean, it depends. I mean, we're talking figuratively here, but how should you be spending your resources as a campus is best ways to service students and service prospective students. And I mean, I think the argument is a clear yes. And I think if we say it's not, your competition says yes, you're in serious trouble. But to get back to Facebook, I agree. I don't see Facebook as being the place you want to put something, especially not only on Facebook. That's the problem with some of these tabs. What I love, as I say, about these tours, I do like the idea of utilizing a tab on Facebook. I think that you can have a landing tab and then bounce people off of Facebook to somewhere else, but Facebook alone is not going to help because prospective students aren't running to you in masses to your Facebook page to be convinced. I am of the opinion that the prospective students that are on your Facebook page largely are there to get a sense of community, and that's literally by lurking and checking out. Parents statistically ask questions, students do not. So they're trying to capture what's the experience like on campus, but they want to capture it from Facebook. So they don't want to hear from you. They're on Facebook to try and either ask questions and get honest answers or to see what people are talking about. So I just think prospective students are using Facebook for a different reason. And while, I mean, it's nice to put some information there so they can find it, I think if you're planning that's going to be the home of your virtual tour, I think you're in trouble. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk again big picture. We're saying virtual tours don't need to look like a navigable step A to step B, step C process where you're literally being walked around. Maybe it's not so physical. So here's the question. What would a tour look like on any level if it wasn't just map-based? Mm-hmm. And I also hope this is just an idea that's a little out there, but I love what you're talking about, Mike. So this is what you just showed me before.
Right. So this is I just found this through when I was looking through some sites that were pushed through for sort of interactive design. But BU Admissions put out this You at BU campaign. And I know there was a lot of campaigning around it to drive people to the site, but I think it's an interesting concept of how do you present content in a way that leads people from clicking on one video to the next video, and also being able to filter what types of videos they want to see. So that all in one platform. I'd say on top of this, these are great clips to repurpose to YouTube or to other areas where people are searching for this. The other thing we haven't even really talked about is that the fact that the social graph is becoming so much more popular in search results, that you want the prospective students that are watching this video to share this out with their friends or like this or find different ways where Google knows that, yes, they enjoyed this video, they watched this video. Google can't tell that from your site if you're not putting share buttons on there, like buttons, all that kind of stuff. So you want someone searching for your college to see a video that becomes very popular with all their friends. So I think this is a good application for an all-in-one site, but it's also a good way to see what type of content could also be repurposed across the net so you show up higher on these search results.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So where do we go from here is the biggest question. And I think, one thing is, Phoenix, there's so much work that it's out of the reach of many, many schools. And I think